It sounds a little silly, but we have a real life example. Remember, when you were in your village, when you went for your summer holidays or whatever it is, there used to be a kaithakatil. The kaithakatil, the ropes look to be very loosely wound. When you look at the cot, you think when I go and lie down there, it will sag. But you go and lie down there, it will suddenly become tight and the whole cot becomes springy. Exactly that is what has happened. And so 216 feet to be exact, I think, and multiple tons of granite stones have been meshed together in that loose form to form a gopuram that is astounding, and it is standing there for almost 1,010 years without any problems. Now you can perhaps sit back and wonder and say, look, I don't think this was constructed with this in mind. You have found out this data later and you are trying to glorify those architects of those days. Sorry. Actually, there is a story from that period that corroborates this story. Now, when they were building all that together, the temple was almost nearing, the erection of that gopuram was almost nearing completion. The last few stages were still to be found. But the reality is, even though you are going to have with gaps in between, you cannot have the stones big or smaller than what is required. It has to be the exact size that is required, then only it will mesh. Otherwise, it will overlap or it will crack or do whatever it is. And to avoid that, you need to have those exact sizes. They almost came to the final size, and they could not find among the thousands and thousands of stones that were lying around, they could not find one that fitted. Either it was too small or too big. They were all worried. The chief architect, or Sthapati as he is called, he was a worried man. But he was very religious, he was a Shiva Bhakta, so he prayed for direction. That night, he had a dream. And in that dream, he was told where to look for his final stone. Now, before we go where did he look and all that, I want to tell you something about the big temple's construction. Rajaraja Chola wanted the temple to be built with the contribution of each and every citizen of this. He wanted each citizen to feel that the temple was his. So he solicited contribution from the people. Some donated money, some donated grains from their field for feeding the people who were working there. Some people offered to work for free at the working site. One such lady was a very poor woman who made her livelihood from supplying or selling buttermilk. So she said, as her contribution, she will give free buttermilk to everybody who is working at the site in that hot sun. The dream said, in her doorstep there is a stone, go and pick it up. So the next day they went there, they found that stone there, they picked it up, and surprise, 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 it fitted like a glove. Now, this is a stone that is fixed exactly on top of the deity in big temple. This is not a story. This name of this lady, the story, all of this has been sculpted in one of the stones in Brihadishwar temple even today. So this is exactly the background of the big temple and the engineering expertise that they exhibited there. But did they limit their excellence to only engineering excellence? No, they were artistic as well. See, there is a temple in Hampi where these pillars, you know, each one of them, it will produce one of the Saptasvaras. They are called the singing pillars of Hampi. Closer home, there is one temple in Balasur, Airavata Swami temple, where there are steps which will give you, each step will give you a saptaswara, one of those swaras. But unfortunately, we as people, we do not know how to respect something like this. So most unfortunately today, the whole thing has been fenced up and locked so that it is not accessible to people. When I showed you the previous one under musical steps of Dharasram, if any one of you quickly looked at it, counted the number of steps and felt, yes, sir is telling 7 steps, saptaswaras, but there seems to be more than 7 steps there, then I must really admire and appreciate your observation power. There are actually 10 steps. Starting from here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steps. So what are those other 3 steps for? The first one will give you the sound of A, the second one will give you the sound of and the last one will give you the sound of In. So if you quickly tap that 3 together, it will give you the sound of Om. According to NASA, that is the sound that is percolating all over Milky Way. But the surprise I was trying to show you does not limit there. It was in 20th century only when we started depicting sound in 2-dimensional sound waveforms. But this temple, built somewhere around 800, 900 years before that also, there is a sculpture which is the graphical presentation of the sound Om as you would see in a sonic wave. This is in the same temple. So it was also possible for those guys to imagine how the sound waves will be. Any student who has attended a physics laboratory will remember the pinhole camera. But the pinhole camera concept has been used in Virupaksha temple, where because of the pinhole, the gopuram is visible as a reflection upside down. And the hole is here. I just wanted to show you the pinhole for the size of this temple. This is a pinhole. Actually, a pinhole is a hole that you make out of a pin, but this is certainly bigger than that pinhole. But for a size of this gopuram, this is comparatively, and this is how it appears. So that shows you how the pinhole camera in physics was used in architectural brilliance as well. Benjamin Franklin was the man who is being credited to have generated electricity first in 1743, but that's not true. In fact, in Agastya Samhita, he does give an example or description of how you can produce what he called Mitra Varuna Shakti, which is actually electricity. Now, this could be imagination. So what they did in the CSIR laboratory was build an equipment which replicated this and found that it produced 1.138 volts of even today, of electricity even today. Having covered all this, there is one area where our ancestors simply excelled in mathematics. These genes have percolated in all of us. World over, we Indians are considered to be numerically highly literate. There are plenty of examples of mathematical brilliance exhibited by our ancestors. But today, I am going to plan to limit myself to one just example that amazed me, and I am sure it will amaze you too. Many of you would have played chess. there is a chess play called knight or horse. In our language we call it horse, but in the Western one they call it knight. It is a peculiar movement, allowed movement. It's a diagonal movement, and there is a puzzle that has bugged chess players for years and years. The puzzle is called the knight's door. The puzzle is simply this. You start with the leftmost top corner of a chessboard consisting of 64 squares, 8 by 8, 64 squares, and move the knight exactly within the permissible movement, diagonal movement or peculiar diagonal movement. Cover each and every one of those 64 squares without repeating any one of them or missing any one of them. Whether this is possible is the fundamental question. Any mathematics teacher will tell you that there was an Austrian mathematician called Euler who in the year 1759 gave a solution for this light storm. But that again is not historically correct. About 500 years before that, in our Srirangam here, in the 13th century, Vedanta Deshika provided the solution to the puzzle in Srirangam. Now, Vedanta Deshika was a very strong Ravindranath Bhakta. He was asked to compose 1008 slokas in praise of Lord Ranganatha. In typical humility of Vedanta Deshika, he said, "I'm sorry, I'm neither qualified nor equipped to write 1008 slokas in praise of Lord Ranganatha," and refused. So the people asked him, how about writing 1008 slokas in praise of his lotus feet? He said, that also I cannot do, but maybe I'll write 1008 slokas in praise of the paduka, the shoes or the slippers that he wears. And that is how Paduka Sahasram came up, 1008 slokas that were written according to our scriptures overnight. In one night he sat down and wrote down all those 1008 slokas. That proved his, of course, proficiency in the language. It was all in Sanskrit, and that showed his proficiency in the language called Sanskrit and its grammar. Almost all the slokas in Paduka Sahasram consisted of 32 syllables. Now, here comes the solution. This is where the solution for those night store has come up from Paduka Sahasram. These are 929, which is the key shloka, and 930, which is the encoder shloka. I call it the key shloka and the encoder shloka, just to give you a background of what exactly is the. Now, if you watch, this shloka has got 32 syllables. The same 32 syllables have been jumbled up to make another shloka of 32 syllables, but with a valid meaning. I mean, it also has a meaning. It is not some mumbo jumbo that you have created by jumbling up those 32 syllables. Now, when you take the 929 and write it on a chessboard and write each one of those syllables, number them so that you know which syllable is what number. Similarly, take a chessboard with 32 syllables or 32 squares, write these. I have done the second exercise for you. You will see this is the shloka that has been written in the 32 syllables. Now what you have to do is pick out that syllable, find out what is the number in 929. Write out those numbers. Now if you look at it, 1 to 2, serially, this is a knight's movement. 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, 9 to 10. Like that if you go, it will cover 32 slips without repeating any one of the squares. This is the solution. Now, you will watch 32 is here. Now what will be the next step for this night? It will be this and here, right? Which will be the bottom half of the chess board. So you repeat the same 32, you have covered all the 64 squares as per the solution. This is given by Vedanta Deshika in our own hometown called Srirangam, just a few kilometers from here, and not Iyer. Now, this is a very complex calculation. I am not denying that. Where is the guarantee that all this was not found out later, and just because I want to make Vedanta Deshika look great or glorify him, I am attributing that solution to him? Possible. But just this fact is important. Out of the 1008 slokas that he had written, he had used different rhythms, or what they call bundles, or meters. In English language we call them meters, for composing those 1008 slokas. There are only two slokas, that is 929 and 930. He has composed in a bandham called Chaturanga, Turanga, Bandham. Chaturanga means chess, Turanga means horse, Bandham means pace or movement. So, deliberately he wrote two of those 1008 slokas in a meter that is supposed to be solution. So it is not an accident, or it is not a later finding, it is not something, it is a deliberate attempt by that person to give you the solution for it is what, but he was capable. Vedanta Deshika was a multifaceted person. His command over the language, his command over mathematics, his command over logics, his command over philosophy was unbelievable. That's perhaps brings us to the majority of the points that I wanted to say. For early learning to be successful, there has to be Guru Bhakti, devotion to one's teacher. To foster that heritage, this institution, Saranathan, happens to be a standing example of Guru Bhakti. When our founder secretary, auditor Santhanam established this college, he could have easily named that college after himself or any one of his children. But he decided to name it after Principal Saranathan, who was the principal of National College and his guru when he studied in National College. So each one of you has landed up in an institution that values its heritage. Okay, so we have had quite an exhaustive look at our heritage. What happens when we know our heritage? We realize the achievements of our forefathers, whose genes we have inherited. These genes must tell each one of us. Imagine, my friend, if you could do this to your forefather who did not have any access to today's tools and facilities. What can I do to you who has access to all those? So here is what should really motivate each one of us and make our career fly high. The moment I hear the word fly high, I'm reminded of a beautiful motivational story that I read, which is what I want to end my lecture with. A mother eagle had laid a few eggs for hatching. An eagle builds its nest high up in the mountains. I do not know how many of you have seen an eagle's nest. But an eagle's nest is not just a nest like any other bird's nest that you and I can imagine. It's just a few twigs and leaves slipped in a crack between two rocks. That is the eagle's nest. So that is where it had kept its egg. One day, one of those eggs accidentally, unfortunately, rolled down that crack and fell outside the nest. But fortunately, it fell inside a basket that a lady was carrying. She had come up the mountain to collect firewood and fruits perhaps. It fell inside her. Inadvertently, she carried it all the way to her farm, and when she was emptying her basket, she found this egg. She said, wondering how did the egg come there. But she thought maybe by mistake it had been left from her poultry farm. So she took that egg and put it along with the other poultry eggs for the hen to hatch, mother hen to hatch. She hatched it also. In due time, the eggs hatched and out popped this eaglet along with the other chicken. They all came out and these eaglets saw around, found that the others were a little different but didn't know what to do. So it followed what they did and did exactly what the other chicken were also doing. After a few days, the mother hen took out the chicken for the first day out. So all of them very dutifully followed the mother egg. And when the chicken were all outside on this eaglet looked up and saw one bird soaring in the sky. That bird looked a little bigger than itself, but it resembled. So the eaglet thought amongst itself, within itself, how would it be if I can soar like that? So it decided to try. First time it tried, it flew only a few feet, flopped and fell down. Second time it tried, maybe a little further, third, fourth, fifth, God knows. Finally, it came to a stage where it could fly, stabilize, and soar. What happened? How did this happen? Actually, the genes took over. The eaglet was capable of soaring. It didn't know it was. It was capable of soaring. It allowed its gene, it tried, made its effort, tried, it allowed its gene to take over, and it soared. Exactly similarly, each one of you is made, born to soar in your career. Don't be earthbound like a chicken. Make your effort. Let that gene of your forefathers, whose heritage you have inherited, take over and allow you to soar in your career. Happy soaring. God bless you all.